Ubuntu remains one of the most popular operating systems in the world and perhaps the most famous of all the Linux-based systems. They've been around since 2004, and yes, they deserve to be called at least one of the best. So let's take a quick look on how to get started from the eyes of a Windows user like myself, who has used different Linux-based systems over the course of many years. You want to check out Ubuntu.com first for more information, of course. And the first thing you want to do is take a look at the tutorial section. This is an excellent and absolutely superb tutorial list on how to get started. I've talked about this before, but I can tell you as a Windows user, the team at Canonical who make Ubuntu have done a very good job on how to get started with the Ubuntu operating system. Now, you'll probably want to create a live USB stick. You can search my channel on how to do that. It's not that difficult. As far as downloads, you want to download the LTS, the long-term support, the 20.04. This will give you up to 5 years support. These tend to be a little bit more reliable than the non-standard or the non-LTS releases. It's your choice, but I would probably go with the LTS, and that's what I am showing you now. So download the 20.04, the current LTS release from Ubuntu. Alright, next up, you want to download the Chrome browser. It is the best browser for Linux in my multiple years of trying different Linux-based systems. Firefox is installed by default, but just download the Chrome browser. Next up, you want to take a look at Gnome Extensions. This is where it gets a little, it can get tricky, especially if you are new to this. There are probably hundreds of Gnome extensions to make your system more functionable. Not all of them work. Probably half of these don't work. That's okay. You only need one. You must install one Gnome extension or else you might get lost. That number one extension you should install is the Applications menu. I've already installed this, tested it. It works fine. This is the only one you need to install to get started. And as you can see, it looks like this. It's a drop-down menu that you've seen before in Windows. Next up, you want to run the updates. Of course, you probably should do this first, but that's okay. So run the updater and let it check for updates. Probably at first time you do this, you're probably looking at 400 megabytes, maybe more. Don't panic. That's okay. That's normal. You may have to reboot. In my case, I've already done it. Right now I have 1.7 megabytes to download. That can wait till later. So I just click Remind Me Later. I can do it now if I want, but I will not. So let's move on from this. So this is how the default desktop is going to look. In your case, it'll probably show up with a purplish wallpaper. If I remember correctly, I just downloaded some Florida wallpapers to give it more of a bright and cheery look since I used to live down there. So this is the default desktop. You have a panel at the top, the favorites to the left. You can right-click, of course, and change the wallpapers if you want to. And to the left, you have all of your settings lined up. If you click About, this will give you information about your current system in case you don't know. In my case, I'm testing a 10-year-old Lenovo desktop. It's an old Athlon 2 processor, maxed out with 8 gigs of RAM. It's stable. It works. Ubuntu is not the lightest of the Linux-based systems, so my system is a little bit slow. It's stable. It will not crash, but it is a little bit slow. So keep that in mind if you are running a system older than 5 years, and definitely if it's 10 years old. This is probably going to run a little bit slow, but it is stable, and I will recommend anything that is stable. You can take a look at the Software Center. This is probably the best way to get started to install your favorite pieces of software. Very easy to use. For example, they have highlighted Audacity audio software. This is for Windows 2, by the way. Great piece of software. So this is just an example of how to install software after you install Ubuntu. Now, this is not the only way to install software. I will show you another way. We are going to open up a terminal. I prefer something called the Synaptic Package Manager. Been using this since 2006. Love this package manager. You don't really have to do this, but the way to install this is just a quick way, is to type in sudo apt install, sudo space apt space install. And in this case, I'm going to install Synaptic. So I'm just going to type in Synaptic, which is short for the Synaptic Package Manager. Click Enter. I've already done it, by the way, but in your case, you would type in your password, continue, let it install, and it'll show up on the drop-down menu. Again, this is probably something you want to do after you get acclimated to the Ubuntu operating system. But trust me, you will love Synaptic. If you take a look at the Ubuntu Software Center, you can also search for something called the Gnome Tweak tool. This is mandatory. You have to install this or else you will be lost. I don't understand why this isn't installed by default. It's tweak settings for the GNOME desktop, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to understand and to tweak your system. So if I click the GNOME Tweak shortcut, you can see here to the left, if I go to extensions, this will tell me which extensions I have installed that I can toggle on or off. Again, really, to get started for you, all you need is the main one on the top. But if we go to general, I've toggled off, you can see there where it says suspend when laptop lid is closed. This is a desktop, so I toggled that off. I kept animations on. It looks kind of cool, but really, I could toggle that off. Appearance, of course, you can go light and dark themes, my extensions, my fonts, keyboard and mouse, startup applications. Again, you get the picture. This is almost like the control panel for Windows, I guess, sort of. Title bars, of course, to the right, maximize, minimize, and so on. But yeah, you will need the GNOME Tweak tool to make your Ubuntu life a lot easier. And really, to get started, this is really all that you need. One last thing I want to say, going back to GNOME Extensions, a lot of these may not work. For example, I wanted to install the weather extension, just a simple weather extension, because it says, yeah, a simple extension for displaying weather. However, when I click that and I click on to install, it gives me an error. So you may see this a lot. Don't panic. It's not the fault of your system. A lot of these extensions don't get updated, and it says here at the bottom, please update to the GNOME 40DE or desktop environment. You probably have no idea what that means if you are new. That's okay. And this is where extensions fail. You really can't ask a newbie to, download Ubuntu, then update the GNOME desktop and hope everything works. That is unacceptable. So keep in mind that you only need the one extension, that is the applications menu, period. If you see an error message, don't worry about it. Move on to the next one, or just stick with the applications menu only for now to help you get started. That's it. That's really the only caution or warning that you need when installing Ubuntu with the GNOME desktop environment. But other than that, I will recommend anything that's stable, including Ubuntu. It's not my favorite desktop environment, but Ubuntu does work. I use something called Ubuntu Mate based off Ubuntu, and for me that is my Linux gold standard. But if you want to start where it all started, with the Ubuntu company back in 2004 releasing their first, I started in 2006, then why not get started with the original Ubuntu? I will have links below in the show notes. Take care, have fun. I'll catch you on the next one.